Something seismic is shifting in Kyiv, and the world is watching in stunned silence. For years, President Volodymyr Zelensky was portrayed as the West's indispensable wartime leader, the global face of Ukraine's resistance, the man European governments rallied behind. But now that facade is cracking because the resignation of Andriy Yermak, Ukraine's most powerful unelected figure and Zelensky's closest ally and the architect of Kyiv's diplomacy, has sent shockwaves through Ukraine's political core. Anti-corruption investigators stormed his residence inside the presidential compound. His office was searched, ministers have resigned and allies are fleeing abroad. And it leaves one question hanging over the country. Is this the beginning of the end of the Zelensky era? Hello and welcome back to TFI Global. Early Friday morning, Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies carried out something unheard of during wartime. A full search of Yermak's secure presidential quarters. NABU and SAP investigators backed by court warrants combed through documents, devices and internal correspondence, part of a sweeping probe into a $100 million corruption scheme inside Ukraine's energy sector. Two ministers have already resigned. A former business associate of Zelensky, accused of orchestrating the kickback scheme, has reportedly fled the country. And with the scandal creeping into the presidential orbit, the pressure on Yermak became impossible to ignore. By evening, Zelensky announced it. Yermak has submitted his resignation. For a government already battling military setbacks, energy shortages, and public fatigue, it was the most dramatic internal rupture in years. To understand the magnitude of this moment, you have to understand who Yermak is. For many in Kyiv, he wasn't just a chief of staff. He was co-president in everything but title. The strategist, the negotiator, and the gatekeeper to power. He shaped Ukraine's messaging to Washington, negotiated with European leaders, and oversaw wartime diplomacy. Nothing from military aid requests to international PR happened without crossing Yermak's desk. So when investigators raided his residence, it wasn't simply a legal operation. It was a political earthquake, one that now forces Zelensky to reset his entire presidency in the middle of a war. The timing could not have been worse. Ukraine's battlefield position has weakened over the past year. Public support in Western capitals has dropped sharply. Financial assistance has slowed to its lowest level since 2022. European governments are openly debating what a post-Zelensky political landscape might look like. Meanwhile, inside Ukraine, frustration is bubbling. Stalled reforms, corruption scandals, mobilization fears. A grinding war entering its fourth winter. The Yermak raid didn't just reveal corruption concerns. It revealed a government under extraordinary strain. And for the first time, Zelensky's grip on power looks uncertain. Here's the reality. Powerful nations value stability, predictability, and transparency, especially during war. When internal scandals start touching the president's inner circle, when corruption cases implicate high-level officials, and when leaders lose the confidence of allies, support doesn't disappear overnight, it starts to shift quietly. European diplomats have already described the events in Kyiv as a destabilizing moment, a turning point, a signal that leadership changes are coming. Not because foreign governments want chaos, but because they fear it. And when allies fear instability, they start preparing contingencies. New negotiators have already been appointed. Washington is reassessing its channel of communication, and Brussels is watching closely. The message is subtle but unmistakable. The political landscape in Kyiv is changing fast. For Zelensky, Yermak's resignation is more than a staffing change. It is a moment of reckoning. Because Yermak wasn't just an aide, he was Zelensky's shield, strategist, and enforcer. Without him, Zelensky stands more exposed to corruption, scrutiny, to political rivals, to international pressure, and to public dissatisfaction. His leadership is being judged not just by military outcomes, but by whether Ukraine's institutions can function during war. And now those institutions are investigating the very center of his administration. So the question many analysts are now asking is simple. What does Zelensky do next? Does he attempt to regain control through a dramatic reshuffle? Does he hold early elections hoping for a renewed mandate? Does he negotiate a political deal to preserve influence? Or does he consider stepping aside before scandals consume his presidency? These aren't predictions, they're the scenarios being discussed in Kyiv, Brussels, and Washington. Because the pressure is real, the stakes are enormous, and the war gives him little room to maneuver. Ukraine is entering one of the most dangerous and unpredictable phases of the war, a moment where political instability at the top can ripple through the military, the economy, and the diplomacy. Yermak's fall is not the end of the crisis, it is the beginning. And whether Zelensky survives politically will depend on what happens in the next few weeks. Who replaces Yermak? How deep the investigations go? How do the allies react? And whether Ukraine's leadership can restore unity before the battlefield pressures intensify again. The story is far from over. Thanks for watching.